Well, good day, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the Banner Buzz. I'm Keith Domke, the managing editor of the Banner Press, and I am just thrilled and beyond excited to welcome my special guests today, Sharon and Barry Brass from the Barnhill Center. I know there's more to it than the Barnhill Center, but anyway, that's how I'm going to introduce you. Thanks for being here. Welcome. It's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to see you fine folks. And I look forward to our visit. So let's get right into it. Before we kind of get into what you do, tell us a little bit about yourselves. You know, where were you raised? How did you meet? All that fun stuff.
Be happy to. We're about to be married for 40 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And we just realized half of that has been spent here in Brenham. But we met 41 years ago. We worked for the same company. I was in our Houston office. Sharon was in our Austin office. And we got together at a meeting. And as they say, the rest is history.
So who has to put up more with whom? Never mind.
That's a mutual thing.
So then you said you've been, your nearly 40 years of marriage, 20 of it has been at the Barnhill. So how did all that come about? How did you end up getting involved with the Barnhill?
20's been in Brenham, not at the Barnhill.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. So, then explain that. How did you get involved with the Barnhill and what do you both do there?
Well, 20 years ago, a little over 20 years ago, we started looking to our future. Mm-hmm. We had always lived and worked in and near a large city because our work required being close to an airport, our clients, etc. So we were looking for our future, and we started looking for property, and we ended up buying some property here in Washington County in 1999. And then we moved out here full-time in 2004 and decided to do something totally different. And we opened the Quick Copy that's on Day Street.
Oh, okay.
We started that from scratch. And we thought that would kind of be our retirement business, not realizing that we'd end up working harder than we ever did for corporate America. And through that business, we started getting more and more involved in Brenham, Washington County, and the local community. And we got involved in a lot of downtown projects, and that's probably where Sharon can pick it up from there.
Well, I started working with Jennifer Eckerman at the city. She was the Main Street Brenham manager. It was about 2006, I believe. I was on one of her committees. And she and I just grew closer and closer over the years. About 2009, she invited me to help her open Tobin Park. So I did the research and the writing of those displays, and together we opened that park in 2011. We had uncovered a lot of history that had not been told before. So the park was a place where we could put some of it, but there was so much other information. We decided a book was needed. So there we came up with the Burning of Brenham book. And then we did a play a couple of times about that history. That history led us to, again, myself and Jennifer, through the Main Street Brenham program, creating Local History Day for BISD.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And we ran that for a few years. But still, the same history also led us to create these movies that we play at the Barnhill Center for tourists. There are a series of 7 short movies that tourists get to see, and from there, we've just always been real connected with Jennifer and with the tourism program. So when she got she was assigned responsibility for the Barnhill Center, I believe, in 2018. So we jumped in to help with that too. Since then, I've been doing the bookings and the producing of the shows.
Right.
Barry has been doing the MC work, and he does the finances. So throughout our whole lives, we've been working together, and here in our old age, we're having more fun than we ever have.
Good. That's what it's all about, right? That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I knew you, obviously with our connection with the media and you, obviously I know you were the producer, of the shows and so forth. And I knew you were involved, but I wasn't quite sure with how much you were involved.
Well, the way that evolved, as Sharon said, we were doing a lot of work with the city and with Jennifer on a number of projects. And the Tobin Park project, as Sharon said, we launched that park with a little play. Instead of doing the typical ribbon cutting with speeches and everything, we put a little play together to introduce the characters in the story that's told in the park.
That's awesome.
And we did it on the sidewalk there on Park Street in front of the park.
Mm-hmm.
The city closed the street and put chairs and benches out there, and we did the play. That got us involved in doing some other reenactment work and historical work. And when we did these historical movies that Sharon mentioned, we showed them at the Barnhill Center when it was open.
Mm-hmm.
And Barry was in those movies, by the way. He played our main character, J.D. Giddings, who was sort of the patriarch of Brenham.
Remind me to get your autograph then.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's a fee for that.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll put it on my expense account.
When the Barnhill Auditorium was reopened, there were some early shows going on there and things like that. And I started volunteering to help out, check people in, do some usher work, etc. And I always had the idea that what we really needed to do was bring in bigger name acts. And when Jennifer was given the responsibility of managing the building, she tasked us to go ahead and try to do a show. And the first show we did was in February of 2019. It was the Gatlin Brothers.
Mm.
That show sold out in just under 24 hours.
Wow.
317 seats sold. In doing that show, we engaged an agent.
Okay.
Because we had never done anything like that before.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the agent charged us a fairly good fee and frankly didn't really do a whole lot of work. And we looked at that, and Sharon in particular reviewed what he did and thought, if that's all it's involved, I could do that. And that's really what got her involved as being the booking agent for the talent. Start making phone calls and away you go.
Yeah.
And that's what we've been doing.
So now I know, Sharon, that's not as easy as it sounds. I know, because, you're trying to get, I know you have a budget and you're trying to get as good a quality. I mean, your shows are wonderful. Your shows are always wonderful.
Thank you, they are.
But I know I'm sure there's just a lot of work. I mean, you do research and you find this act or this act, and then sometimes maybe it's a yes, sometimes maybe it's a no, sometimes maybe they're too expensive. I mean, so how do you go about that process, if I may ask you?
Okay, well, we start generally at the beginning of each year by reviewing the previous year, what worked, what didn't. But more importantly, we also have once a month, well, after every show, we have the feedback that our audience has given us from the shows they attend. One of the questions in our survey is, what would you like to see on this stage? So we take those comments seriously. We review them every month. Then again, at the end of the year, we review all of them before we set up our strategy for the following year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I am a founding member of what we call the Texas Routing Partners. Similar venues, there's about 24 of us now, similar venues all over the state.
Okay.
Talk constantly by phone and email about what hot acts are coming to Texas and who we would like to partner with to get those acts here. If we can call a performer and say, hey, there's 3 of us and we'd like to book you for a whole weekend, we can generally get that artist here and at a lower cost than if individual venues.
Makes sense.
But anyway, so that's a big part of it, is working with the other venues to determine who we can get at the best price. But there's always, daily research, and I listen to an awful lot of videos. And the fun thing is that we go to a lot of shows. We have the most fun job in the world.
Yeah.
We go
really
to concerts all over Texas to scout talent. And very rarely do we bring someone to Brenham unless we first heard them ourselves and totally approve of them. If we're not excited about them, then they're not even in the picture. So it's got to be proven,
Sure.
through listening. And if that's not possible, we get the feedback from the other venues that we partner with who have hosted them. But it's mostly firsthand listening.
And I know, in the couple of years I've been here, I know working with you that you try and get a good variety of different kinds of acts, not only singers, but you brought in a dog act and magicians and
Right.
the Christmas show. So that's got to be a big part of the puzzle too, trying to appeal to everybody,
Right.
because not everybody, and I'm not, not everybody just likes country music or
Right.
whatever, so that's got to be a little tough too at times. Maybe then you have to watch even more videos to.
Right.
And as you had mentioned, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
As you had mentioned before, Keith, it's kind of a financial balancing act
Right.
too, because there are some acts that are just out of our price range.
Sure.
We have a good news, bad news feature of the Barnhill Center, the auditorium, the Haskell Auditorium. The good news is we seat 317 people very comfortably. You've been there. The seats are comfortable. We have cup holders. There's plenty of room between the aisles. That's all good news. The bad news is we only have 317 seats to sell. Limiting what you can effectively price a show for, what people will be willing to pay over and over again to come to a concert, that limits some of the levels of artists that we can go after.
Sure.
So it's kind of a balancing act, and we sometimes we push the envelope to bring in a Lyle Lovett or Ricky Skaggs this year. But people are responding very, very positively.
But getting back to the variety that you asked about, we very carefully choose a wide selection of genres. We have some patrons that love country music, and if we had country music and nothing else, they would be very happy.
Right.
We have other patrons that don't want country music. So we have to balance that. And then at least once a year, in the summertime generally, we like to have a children's show. There you go with the magicians and the dog tricks, and then always a Christmas show. So it turns into, about half and half country with other things mixed in is basically the way it goes.
Yeah. So and again, I think the lineup you get is incredibly great.
Thank you.
To be honest, I'm not a big country music fan, but when Lori Morgan was here, I got a little bit extra involved with that because I thought it'd be kind of a neat thing. But anyway, so let's turn to the Simon Theater.
Sure.
It's a big year for the Simon next year, 100 years. I mean, what a great thing to celebrate, and we hope the newspaper can celebrate with you.
Well, you've been a lot of help. Thank you.
Well, that's our job, and we couldn't do it without you, so we appreciate that. So, I mean, I think the Simon, personally, has got to be the gem of gems in Brenham.
We think
You
so.
know, it's a gorgeous place and all that. So, and I know currently with the Smithsonian Crossroads exhibit going on, you've added the Century of Simon to accompany that exhibit there in Morris Hall. So, before we get more into that, how has the traffic been in the exhibit since it opened a couple weeks ago?
It's we've gotten off to a somewhat slow start,
Okay.
but that's
Well, it rained all weekend.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
we've had bad weather days, and it's the Christmas season. So right now, people are focused on other things, office parties, whatever. We're really it hasn't done bad, but we're really expecting a big uptick in attendance after Christmas.
Okay.
When things settle down a little bit.
Well, people will have house guests here
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, when I talked to Jennifer Eckerman, about it here on this podcast 2-3 weeks ago, she kind of mentioned that too. She said, "Well, we have the exhibit over the holidays. Great. We have the exhibit over the holidays. Maybe not so great.
Right.
Right.
But yeah, I think you're right. I think after we get past Christmas and I know it's open every day except Christmas and New Year's Day, correct? Even on Sundays for 4 hours on Sundays.
On
3
Sundays,
hours?
it's open from 11 to 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just so we know, what are the daily hours and Saturday hours?
Monday to Friday is 10 to 4. Saturday, it's 10 to 3. Sunday, it's 11 to 2.
Okay. So when you put together the Simon exhibit, you have a century's worth of things, or at least, So how did you decide what to include and what not to include? I mean, was that a painstaking process?
That room represents a year of my life. And
Only a year?
And Barry was with me every day helping with the research. Basically, Keith, we dug up too much information. We had a scope of work in mind, and when we put it all together and started doing the design work around it, we realized, just like Tobin Park, there was way too much information to fit in that space. So we took the tip of the iceberg, and you can tell that it's still a lot of stuff in that room. But we had to cut it a couple of times. We had to go through and condense and cut content to fit the space. So there's always the question about, okay, is there going to be a book coming out of this one too? We haven't dared get to that question yet. kind of avoided it.
Sharon did most of the planning, coming up with what information we were going after, how it was going to be displayed and laid out, the organization of the exhibit itself, and then she would task me to go do research. I want to know this, and this. Go find this date, this thing.
This image, this poster, this
So
movie.
I spent a lot of time doing a tremendous amount of research, and I'm going to give you a plug. A huge amount of the information that I discovered were in old Banner articles.
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome. But going back to the 1800s, because we started with the history of vaudeville in the Brenham area at the old Opera House, and finding the articles in the paper that talked about the acts that were appearing, and some of the ads and posters were huge to the effort that we were trying to do.
We were able to find the dates for all the movies that
that's awesome.
that played there.
Yeah. And am I correct? You have the original first show, the first movie that was ever shown in the theater?
Yes.
Is that right?
Fun.
Yeah. The very first, the theater opened November 25th, 1925. after the celebration events.
Uh-huh.
The first movie that was shown was the next day, November 26th, 1925, and it was The Merry Widow, which was a very elaborate and popular movie of the day. And it was a silent movie, of course.
Sure.
Played with accompanying organ music. And we found that, and we got a copy of it. It's playing right now in the exhibit.
Yeah. That's...
And it's so funny.
I mean, by today's standards, it's...
Well, sure, but yeah, what a great thing, though, to have that and be able to show it as part of the exhibit, and so
more than the first movie, because that we kind of knew that. More than that was finding the last movie.
You mean the hardest?
Yeah, the hardest thing for us to find was we always knew that the theater shut down for good sometime in the mid-'80s. And that's the way it was stated for many years, sometime in the mid-'80s. One of the things that Sharon tasked me to find was, when did it shut down and what was the last movie shown? And I spent weeks at the library going through your microfilm of the paper from the mid-'80s. And I could see ads for the Simon, still showing B movies at that time, until October 31st, 1985, was the very last ad I could ever find for a movie.
Okay.
And it was The Return of the Living Dead.
Oh, okay.
And when I found that piece, because after that, there was never again another ad for a movie.
Maybe an appropriate movie if it helped, if that was the last movie shown. I don't know.
I don't know whether that was intentional or not.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, guys,
that's great, though.
It was a Halloween night show.
Yeah, that's great.
But isn't that appropriate?
It is. It is.
When I found that piece, I was so excited, and I said to Sharon, I'm done.
That's great. So, next year being the 100th year, I know you've got a lot of plans for next year, and you've released your entertainment lineup for next year, which is just as incredible as every year. I reacquainted myself with the list, and I know you're going to have some music from the Roaring Twenties and the big band era as part of that party you're having at the end of January.
Just a little bit of those.
Yeah. So tell us about the celebration on January 25th.
Well, we started with vaudeville. That's what was mostly in the Simon in 1925 through about 1932. So we're starting back with our roots. And vaudeville, there was a vaudeville show when we opened the auditorium in 2017, and it was sold out, highly popular, all local talent, though. This vaudeville show that's coming up on January 25th is all professional talent. So we're bringing
that means Barry's in it.
Actually,
Barry is the only non-professional in it. He is on the Unity stage quite often, so I would call him semi-professional.
Okay.
But anyway, musicians, juggling acts, dancers, comedians, and so it's going to be like an old-timey vaudeville show, basically, with one act after another act after, in the style of the Roaring Twenties. We're inviting people to wear Roaring Twenties attire if they'd like to. We will still have the exhibit showing at that point, so people can come early and see the exhibit for that evening. We'll have birthday cake.
Sure. And the Merry Widow will be showing then, since the exhibit's still there, right? So people, yeah. So is this an invitation-only thing, or can the public attend?
This is just part of our regular show lineup. You can buy tickets and come to the show.
Okay. So if people want to come, they can just go through the regular process like they're going to come to any show.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
the other things in the background, the exhibit, the movie, those things will be going on free, but for the show itself, it's regular buy a ticket.
Okay. 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 So, as we wrap up here, what else is besides the entertainment lineup? Is there anything else going on next year that is going to celebrate the Century of Simon?
Well, we're just having a few more shows in the genre of the Roaring Twenties mixed in with our normal variety. And I will say, though, that it's really hard to come to the Barnhill and not just be delighted with what you find. We have a lot of people that say, well, I didn't even know this act, but I knew that if I came tonight, I'd enjoy myself. And so we've built up that trust level with our patrons, that blind faith where they know it's going to be good no matter what. That's, to me, that's very fulfilling. That's the best part of what we do.
Well, kudos to both of you. I mean,
Appreciate that.
It's just a wonderful thing that you folks do, and the quality of entertainment you provide. I mean, it's awesome. So thank you for what you do for the community. I know it's very much appreciated.
So fun.
Final thoughts? Yeah, about the Barnhill, the Simon 2025. We got to wrap up. But
There were two things that I'll jump in here. There were two things that really opened our eyes putting this exhibit together. One is how much the Simon Theater meant to this community.
Sure.
And how it reflected not only what was going on in the community, but what was going on in the country. Because it went through the Roaring Twenties and the Great Depression and World War II, and it was the place to go for entertainment. It was the cultural center.
And news.
Mm-hmm.
And now that it's fully restored, it's again the cultural center.
Mm-hmm.
And what I tell people that come to see the exhibit that are from other towns and cities, every town and city has or had an old theater.
Right.
And while we documented the 100 years of the Simon, it really does relate to people from Huntsville or Conroe or Columbus or wherever, where they have an old theater that either was torn down, sadly, or was restored, or is in need of restoration. And so our exhibit gives them an insight as to what could be. And that makes us feel really proud.
That's neat, yeah. Yeah. So, well, good for you guys both, and I appreciate both of you coming today and visiting. I feel like we could almost visit all afternoon if we wanted to. So,
you buying lunch?
Sure, but thank you for taking the time, and I really appreciate the insight you provided us and the information about the Barnhill of Simon, the Century of Simon exhibit. The things going on in 2025. So thank you. I know you're both busy folks, and you may be tired just listening to all what you've done here in the past year or two, getting ready for all this. So thank you, and everybody. You've been watching the Banner Buzz podcast. Again, I'm Keith Domke, managing editor of the newspaper, and Barry and Sharon Brass have been my guests today. Thank you again. And of course, happy holidays to both of you. Hard to believe Christmas is next week. We're less than a week away. But and before we wrap it up, I just want to remind you that if you're a subscriber, thank you very much. We appreciate you being part of our family. But if you're not a subscriber, it's very easy to do so. And you still have time, as a matter of fact, to give the Banner Press as a Christmas gift if you so desire. It makes a great, of course, I'm a newspaper guy. I can't think of a better Christmas gift than to get a year's worth of information about where you live. But anyway, to subscribe, it's very easy. Just call 979-836-7956. Again, 979-836-7956, and we'll be happy to take care of you. And again, if you're a subscriber, thank you. If you're not, please join our family. We'd love to have you. Again, thank you. Thank you, everybody, and have a Merry Christmas, and we'll see you next time.